Welcome to today's episode. We're going to take a quick look at a deeply personal and moving story of self-discovery, resilience, and mental health. Our guest is Stacey Day, author of Lost Mind, who shares her journey through schizophrenia as told in her journals. Stacey, welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here and share my experiences with others. I truly hope that my story can help people feel less alone in their own struggles.
Stacey, your book is titled Lost Mind. That's a striking name. Can you tell us about the very beginning of your journey and what led up to realizing something was different in your life?
Absolutely. The story really begins when I made a difficult decision to leave behind my career, something I'd invested so much of myself into. It was during this transition that I started noticing things weren't quite right. I felt off, and looking back now, those were the first signs, little things that didn't add up, but were easy to dismiss at first.
Change can be such a trigger for self-reflection. In the early chapters, you mentioned two people, Jacob and Jesse, who played significant roles in your story. What was it about meeting them that became so pivotal for you?
Jacob and Jesse were two familiar faces from my life, but encountering them during that time became a catalyst for a lot of inner turmoil. There was a dinner together that really marked a turning point when I suddenly felt unmoored, both emotionally and mentally. That night was memorable for a lot of reasons, personal ones like losing my virginity, but also because it set off a chain of events that challenged everything I thought I knew about myself.
In your book, you also draw symbolism from simple things, like an apple in chapter 3. Could you tell us a bit about that and the connection you made to your family history?
Yes, the apple became more than just a detail. It was a metaphor for my own mental health journey. There's that saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, which really resonated as I began comparing my struggles to what my family was going through with mental health and addiction at the time. It made me realize how interconnected these cycles can be, and it made me reflect deeply on my own path.
That awareness of generational patterns is so powerful. Later, you talk about someone named Johnny and a formative relationship with him in high school. What impact did his story have on yours?
Johnny was a huge part of my high school years. Our relationship was meaningful but also complex, and his death hit me incredibly hard. Losing someone at that age can really change your perspective on life and mortality, and it was one more layer in the mix of emotions and experiences shaping my mental state.
Your mother's story is also central. Her health and her journey from a coma at your birth to struggles with addiction and recovery. How did this shape your understanding of yourself and your journey through mental health?
My mother and I had a complicated but deeply loving relationship. She fought battles of her own, from her recovery to her final days. Witnessing her strength and also her pain shaped how I viewed my own resilience, the way I tried to cope and sometimes failed in the face of overwhelming circumstances. Dealing with her death forced me to reckon with grief in a very real way.
It sounds like these layered traumas and family history set the stage for the challenges to come. You also mentioned childhood dreams and what you call shadow work. Can you unpack what those dreams meant and how they foreshadowed your experiences with mental health?
Definitely. As a child, I had recurring dreams that, in retrospect, hinted at anxieties and struggles I hadn't yet named. As I grew older, I realized these dreams were my subconscious processing things I couldn't talk about during the day. Shadow work is really about facing those hidden parts of yourself, sometimes through journaling or therapy, and learning to accept all of your experiences, the good and the difficult.
There's a powerful shift in your story as you move into adulthood. Finding success in your career, building a family, even the hope of becoming a writer. How did these aspirations interact with your mental health at that stage?
For a while, it felt like I had it all together, a happy marriage, a son, and a fulfilling career. But there was still this dream of being a writer tugging at me. As high as those highs were, the underlying struggles with mental illness were still present, and eventually they resurfaced even when everything seemed perfect on the outside.
And things took a challenging turn, as you described, leaving your successful life in the hard years that followed. What did that period teach you about resilience and vulnerability?
Those years were brutal. There's no sugarcoating it. Illnesses in my family, the stress of change, and feeling isolated took a huge toll on my health. But it was also a wake-up call. Admitting I needed help was the most vulnerable thing I've ever done, but it was the turning point toward healing.
That leads to the chapter where you talk about your breakdown and time spent in a psych ward. That's a deeply personal revelation. What did your time there teach you?
Being in the psych ward was both scary and ultimately deeply humanizing. I met people like Shane, who was going through similar struggles. It reminded me that mental illness doesn't discriminate and that seeking help isn't a weakness, it's essential.
Finally, your book comes full circle with a chapter about reclaiming your life and reflecting on what you've learned. If you could go back and tell your younger self anything, what would it be?
I think I'd tell her that healing isn't a straight path and it's okay to stumble or even break down completely. I'd tell her not to be ashamed of her story or her struggle because each step, even the painful ones, brings you closer to understanding yourself. Most of all, I'd remind her that she's not alone.
Stacy, thank you for sharing your journey with such honesty and hope. Your story is a reminder that resilience comes in many forms, and that talking about our mental health can be a powerful step toward healing.
Thank you so much for letting me share my story. I hope anyone listening knows that there is always hope and help out there.
And thank you to everyone who tuned in today. Join us next time for more stories of courage and transformation.